Hey everyone, welcome so much to Know Your Food with Wardee, episode 140. That rhymes. I have a guest today, Lindsey Dietz. You may be seeing her on the screen if you are watching the video recording of this podcast, or if you're with us live on Blab. Hi, Lindsey.
Hi.
So glad you're here. I want to tell everyone a little bit about you and what we're doing today.
Okay.
So some backstory is Lindsey and I have been working together online for a number of years. She's been a contributing writer to traditionalcookingschool.com, and she has recently taken the position of content editor. So she's helping me with all the content that we publish on a daily basis at Traditional Cooking School. She also assists me in Traditional Cooking School with members on the traditional food makeovers we offer to our premium members and other things as well. So I really, really love working with Lindsey. Such a blessing. And I'm so thrilled today because we're actually not talking about anything at Traditional Cooking School. We're talking about a big part of Lindsey's life that she works on because she and her family love nourishing foods and traditional cooking. And she has a really fun story to share about how nourishing no-bake treats took a quite large role in their family recently. And she's even made it available to all of you through an e-cookbook, Nourishing No-Bake Treats, and we're going to talk about that as well as a special offer for you today on the special release of her e-cookbook. So welcome, Lindsey.
Thanks.
I just gave a quick introduction of how you and I work together professionally and what little I know of you, but of course I'm in Oregon, you're in Minnesota, so why don't you just give us a peek into your family's life and help everybody who's here live or listening to the podcast.
Okay, well, I am a native Texan. My husband David and I have been married for 13 years. We have 2 kids. Our son is almost 12. Our daughter is 10 years old, and we homeschool them and always have and love it. We relocated from Texas to Minnesota about 6 months ago in May, and found out very quickly that most homes, actually, I don't think I've seen any homes in Minnesota that have air conditioning. So coming from Texas, where you can't survive without air conditioning, to coming to an area that has no air conditioning was a change, as well as a lot of other things that are different about living in Minnesota. And fun fact, we actually live on the north shore of Lake Superior, about 90 miles from the Canadian border. So we are about as north in Minnesota as you can get, and we live about 4 minutes from Lake Superior. So this area is called the North Shore, and apparently it's a big tourist destination, and we didn't even know it existed until we moved here.
And I want to point out to everybody, Lindsey, like your background right now is proving what a beautiful life you have, because we see kids and I think a dog.
Yes. Yes.
Open it up in the snow out there.
Yes. They have been waiting for it to snow since May. And it has finally snowed, and we got 5 inches a couple days ago. And it's actually the first big snow that we've had since we moved to Minnesota. And according to the locals, the weather right now is extremely mild compared to what it should be. We should have about 3 feet of snow on the ground right now, but we have about 5 inches, and the temperature is above freezing, so it's actually melting off. So the kids are out there. They've been sledding, and our son got a snowboard, and he's testing out his snowboard on our hill. We just absolutely love our land. We live on almost 6 acres, and we have a pretty good combination of open land with forest. And so our kids, in the summertime, they come home for meals, and the rest of the time they're out barefooted in the woods. So it's
wonderful.
It's really great. And we really do like it. It's been a culture shock to move to Minnesota from Texas. I mean, not only have we gone to a different state, but we've gone to, from the south to the north. And everywhere we go, everybody says, "Where are you from?" Because we obviously don't talk like we're locals. So yeah,
that's wonderful. Well, I love that. And I love actually seeing them live it out behind you.
They
So,
are.
but you're here to talk about nourishing no-bake treats. And I'm so excited to get into this because I've seen you go through this journey of discovering them and developing them and now sharing them with everyone. I actually have a little container here of 3 varieties that I made.
And I have a plate here too of 2 kinds that I made. I think we lost Wardee. Did we lose her? She's gone. Well, I'll talk. I brought 2 different kinds of bites that I made. I made the salted caramel and dark chocolate, and I made the avocado mint chip. And I don't know how well you can see those, but they're super yummy. And I think Wardee and I were going to taste our bites together today, but she's gone. So if anyone wants to ask a question right now and help me keep going in the chat over here, that will be great so that I know what to talk about. But I think Wardee wants me to share the story behind how I created the no-bake bites. And so I mentioned earlier that we live in Minnesota and we don't have air conditioning. And so normally the Minnesota summers are pretty mild, and that's why you don't really have to have air conditioning. But this summer was the hottest summer in like 15 years. And so we were just dying on some days because it would get up to 85, 88 degrees. And hey, you're back.
I know. I heard you the whole time and you're doing amazing because I still have the audio, but I lost the video. So you're doing great. So that is what I was going to ask you was tell us the story of how these came to be. So keep going.
Okay. So we, our house is really well insulated and we have new windows and everything. So, but it was still, when it would get 88 degrees outside, the inside of the house would quickly get to 82, 83 degrees inside. And that's really hot. And so one evening we had been at the farmer's market. We have the most adorable farmer's market that's about 5 minutes from our house. And we had just moved to the area. And so, I mean, what's the best way to get to know like-minded people when you're a foodie and you've just moved to the area? You go to the farmer's market, right?
Totally.
So we had been at the farmer's market and I had introduced ourselves to some people, and I'm like my door is open all the time kind of person. Just come inside. You don't even have to knock. And so I just said, hey, why don't some of you guys come over around 8 tonight and we'll hang out. We'll get to know each other. And then I got home and saw the thermostat on my house and it was 82 degrees. And I was like, oh no, I've invited these people over and my house is super hot. And I don't know about you, Wardee, but I can't have anyone come over without feeding them something.
Definitely.
So it was, they were coming around 8, and obviously I didn't have to feed anyone dinner at 8 o'clock. But we got our kitchen cleaned up, and I just started, looking online for something that I could whip up really quick that, obviously would not require me to turn on my oven, because I love people, but if my house is 82 degrees, I'm not turning my oven on for anyone. No. So I needed to not heat up my house anymore. And I found a no-bake recipe that I had all the ingredients for it, and I threw it all together really fast, stuck it in my freezer, and they came over. I pulled the plate out of the freezer, and the whole plate was gone within 20 minutes. And they loved them. And so a couple of days later, I just was thinking, and I was like, I could probably just change a few things about that recipe, or create a new recipe, or add some nuts, or add some of this. And I mean, within a couple of weeks, I had 12 different variations. And yes, and I was showing off mine too. I brought the salted caramel and the avocado mint chip today.
Great. And I brought raspberry and dark chocolate, orange and dark chocolate, and salted caramel.
Oh, yum.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I just started creating these treats, and did not want to turn on my oven. I ended up doing it all without baking a single thing. And then I had all of these bites, because when you're developing recipes, you just end up having a lot of whatever it is that you're making. And so I started to share them with the locals, and I would go up to the little co-op store that we have, and I would say, hey, do you want some of these? Because I have about 100 in my freezer right now. And they loved them. And then I would go find other people that we were getting to know. And I mean, the quickest way to get somebody to like you in a new place
is feed them.
Good food. Really, it was my secret ploy to get everyone to like me.
To make friends.
Right. So finally, one girl who's actually our neighbor, she just lives up the road from us, she said, you should sell these at the farmer's market. And I said, no, nobody, I mean, people go to the farmer's market for produce. They don't go to the farmer's market for dessert. And so she was like, no, really, you should. I really think they would sell well. And I thought, I've got all these little treats in my freezer, and I'm going to take them to the farmer's market. And if I don't sell one, I still have lost nothing, because my kids will have a lifetime supply of snacks. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So it was a win-win either way, and I had nothing to lose. So I set up a little booth, and my husband David, who's here today, he printed out a little ingredient list for everyone, because I like to be super sensitive to people's allergies. And I know the first thing that I ask whenever I go anywhere, if it's a restaurant or anything that has, already prepared food, is I like to say, what's in this, because if it has stuff in it that I don't want to eat, then I don't want to eat it. So we printed up an ingredient list, and we displayed the little bites on a wooden cutting board, and they were a hit. And it was just so much fun. And I went week after week. I kept taking them back. And a couple of weeks, I had actually, I mentioned our area being very touristy, and the summer, the busiest time of year up here. And so even at the farmer's market, you get a lot of people who aren't locals. And so we had tourists coming through the farmer's market, and several of them ordered a dozen and took them with them to their campsite or to whatever resort they were staying at, so that they would have a snack or a dessert to eat where they were at. And it was just so much fun. And I thought, I've just got to make more of these, and I've got to photograph them, and I'm going to turn this into an ebook. So that's what I did.
And there's honestly not another resource like this that I know of on the internet. So
I did my market research too, and I could not find one ebook that had no bake treats in it. So I'm excited.
Well, me too. So I know we went back and forth, and you did even before I entered the conversation, on what would these be called. The book and the collection of recipes is Nourishing No Bake Treats. You actually have the hashtag, though, Bites of Goodness, and informally you call them bites.
I do.
And I'll just hold these up, but you're using a 1 tablespoon scoop.
Yep. And they
topping it with chocolate.
Yep.
And so tell us how you landed on, calling them bites of goodness.
Okay. Well, honestly, you would think that the recipes of a cookbook would be the hardest part, but figuring out what to call them was actually the hardest part, because, they're not a cookie, because traditionally a cookie is a flat, round, thing.
Baked.
Yeah, baked and flat and round, and they're not that. And they look like truffles, but they're not, so I couldn't call them truffles. And so finally, whenever people would come to the farmer's market and they'd say, oh, what do you have here? And I would say, oh, they're just little bites. They're just little yummy bites of goodness. And I kind of felt like that was a weird title, because if somebody looked at that, they'd be like, what in the world is a bite of goodness, Uh-huh. And, but it's one of those things that's like, right before I go to bed is usually whenever I just want a little bite of something. And it's, I just want, if I'm watching Netflix or something right before I go to sleep, I'll always tell my husband, I just need a bite of something sweet. And so we talked it over and decided that although Bites of Goodness would not make a good title for a book, because it's pretty obscure, No Bake Treats is, more straightforward and people know what that is, but we thought we would use the fun hashtag Bites of Goodness. And I'm hoping that when people get the book and they make these little no-bake treats, that they'll share them on social media and they'll use the hashtag Bites of Goodness. And that way we can all see what we're making and we can have fun looking at each other's creations, and it should be great.
I love that. I think it's a great strategy. And I mean, whether we call them cookies, treats, bites, they're just so cute, aren't they?
They are.
I'm going to hold up a pink one. This is the raspberry.
Your pink ones are gorgeous.
Aren't they?
They are.
I think I could have been a little more generous with the chocolate, but next time.
I don't know why. I have chocolate like pouring down the sides.
Yeah. I think mine was getting a little cool. Well, let's continue this conversation. So one of the fun things that I've got to see through the process of you developing the recipes was just hearing little stories about your, like what it was like developing all these recipes, and, you know, your husband, you guys are busy, but you're all very involved at home. So just tell us what the experience was like of batch after batch, trial after trial, you know, with your kids and your husband involved, probably.
Oh yes, they enjoyed it tremendously because they got to eat all this stuff. So for them, it was a lot of fun, and it really was a lot of fun for me because I got to be really creative, and it was kind of like a no pressure kind of creativity, if that makes sense. Yeah. And not knowing in the beginning that I was going to turn it into an ebook, and just kind of challenging myself with how many different variations of this can I come up with, and how many flavors can I make, and what flavors can I combine that will make, you know, something different that people haven't had before. And one of the recipes in the book is a blueberry lemon mint bite. And that's an example of how, you know, I got to use different flavors, and you would never find a blueberry lemon mint cookie, you know, and because once you bake with fresh mint, you lose the flavor of the mint. But when you leave it raw and then you pair it with a citrus, and then you also pair it with a berry, you just have this amazing flavor that would not come across in a baked treat. Mm-hmm. And so that's just one example of how I got to challenge myself to be really creative with flavors. And funny story, my husband, David, I'm totally going to rat him out right now. Because we are from the South, he said, you should create a sweet tea bite. And I was like, babe, sweet tea? Really? And he's like, yeah, you should. And so I actually made sweet tea, and I steeped the coconut in the sweet tea, and then I drained it and squeezed all the moisture out. So I had this like brown coconut, and put it in the blender and made the bites out of it. And we just laughed and laughed because they looked like balls of tuna fish.
So not very appealing.
No, and I even posted them on Instagram, and I said, no matter how I photograph these, they still look like balls of tuna fish. So the sweet tea bites did not make it into the book.
But the question is, did they taste like they should, and you enjoyed them?
They were okay. They were not, that's another reason why they didn't make it into the book, is because, I mean, my kids ate them, but it was not like, I don't think everyone would have enjoyed them.
Gotcha. Well, that was fun.
Hey, we would have never known unless we tried.
Now, Danielle has already asked, are they mostly made from coconut? And that leads us right into the next question we're going to talk about, because there's really like just a simple basic formula that you dress up into these, it could be endless variations.
Oh, absolutely.
So can you just talk about the basic ingredients that are the really, you know, make this cookie base?
Sure.
And how that works.
Yeah. So coconut, unsweetened shredded coconut is the base for 9 of the 12 recipes. 3 of the recipes are based with nuts, soaked and dehydrated crispy nuts, a la Nourishing traditions.
Mm-hmm.
But 9 of the 12 recipes are based with unsweetened shredded coconut. And then kind of what binds them together is I use a fat of some sort. So in some of the recipes, the fat is coconut oil. In some of the recipes, or in one of the recipes, it's avocado, which is the avocado mint chip that I have. In one of the nut-based recipes, the fat that binds everything together is butter. And then I also use a sweetener, and all of the recipes except one use a liquid sweetener. And so the liquid sweetener combined with the fat is kind of the glue that keeps it all together. And then from there, it was just adding flavors and playing around with, lime zest and lemon zest and fresh berries and frozen berries and determining which one worked better. And one of the bites has bacon in it. So you can't go wrong with that. But so yeah, they are mostly made of coconut, and 3 of the recipes are made with nuts. But if you are avoiding nuts or you're allergic to nuts, you can still get a lot of out of the book.
Gotcha. I got a little distracted by some not great comments. So to just expand on that a little bit, Sev is asking about Trim Healthy Mama Friendly, and I'm just going to answer that really quick. Okay. And someone else said, have you tried honey? And Sev uses small amounts of traditional sweeteners like honey, maple, coconut sugar, molasses, and infrequent crossovers. Well, it is sweetened, Sev, and it has fat from, like Lindsey talked about. There's either a coconut or a nut seed base that's held together with a fat, and in most of the cases, a liquid sweetener. So Trim Healthy Mama, you usually separate your fats and your carbs, or in this case, sweeteners. So it's not going to really be a Trim Healthy Mama treat, unless you're okay with a small amount of honey in a crossover dessert situation.
Yeah. Yeah, and I will point out that none of the recipes has more than a 1/4 cup of sweetener, and a couple of the recipes actually have less, and they make between 15 and 18 bites. So if you take a 1/4 cup of raw honey and divide that by 15 or 18, you really are looking at a very low sugar treat anyway.
True. They are not heavily sweet at all. Mm-mm. Yeah, great. Love that. Okay, so moving on here a little bit. I love this. So I brought my 3 in here today, and I made these in 30 minutes. And we used one piece of equipment that I didn't even wash in between, because I kind of planned the 3 recipes I wanted for which flavors would be okay with the next one after it. So talk to us, Lindsey, about how little mess and how simple these are to make.
Oh my goodness, yes. If you own a high-speed blender like a Vitamix or a Blendtec, that is the one and only appliance that you will use. And I cannot speak to the success of these bites if you don't own a high-speed blender, because I do have one, and so I haven't tested them with a regular blender.
I'll just jump in right now and say the food processor.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Is what I used.
Okay, perfect. So if you have a food processor and you don't have a high-speed blender, then that will work great. But you use one appliance and you put all of the ingredients into the appliance, and you hit, your low speed, and you let it blend. And in most cases, I didn't even have to stop the mixer to scrape down the sides. In most cases, it just started folding in on itself. And when it starts to fold in on itself, then the dough is ready. And you use your 1 tablespoon dough scoop, you scoop it out onto parchment paper, you throw it in the freezer, and that's it. Unless you decide to top it with chocolate, or a couple of the recipes, you fold in something like in the avocado mint chip, you fold in chopped chunks of chocolate. In the chocolate covered cherry, you fold in pieces of cut up cherries. But, I even folded mine in the mixer canister. I didn't even take the time to transfer it to a bowl, even though I say that in the recipes to transfer it to a bowl. If you cook like Wardee and I do, it's all about using as few things as possible. Mm-hmm. And so we don't care if we measure something with the same teaspoon 4 times, in 4 different things. We just want to have to wash as few dishes as possible. And we were talking about my family being involved earlier, and I dedicated this book to my kids because this book would not have been possible without them, because they literally would stand at the sink and wash dishes while I was making more recipes, and because we don't have a dishwasher. So they washed more than their fair share of dishes because I was making so many new recipes in a day. And luckily, I had them there and they helped make it possible. But yeah, one appliance, just a mixer and a dough scoop. And then if you do melt some chocolate, a double boiler or just a glass bowl set inside a saucepan, what I use. And that's it. They're so easy and so little mess, which is totally my lifestyle.
And a quick tip about melting the chocolate. What I did was I did a small saucepan of water and I did a mason jar with the chocolate chips in it.
Oh, that's such a good idea.
Yeah. And so then they melted, and then the leftovers, all I had to do is put the cap on the jar and stick it in the fridge for next time.
Yep.
So that even didn't create, other than the spoon that I used to scoop the chocolate and drizzle.
Right.
And in the comments, Danielle May is saying this is exactly how she cooks. The fewer dishes, the better.
Amen.
Yep. Good. Fantastic. Okay. So talk a little bit about people with allergies, because this comes up a lot at traditional cooking school. We have a lot of people working to heal their guts or with food sensitivities or allergies. So I want to make sure and address that for anybody who's here or listening who may be thinking, is this going to work for me?
Okay. Yes. These bites, like I mentioned earlier, 9 of the 12 recipes are totally allergy friendly unless you're allergic to coconut. If you are allergic to coconut, I'm so sorry. Please don't buy my book. It will not help you. But if you're not allergic to coconut, then you're good, because these recipes are dairy free, they are gluten free, they are grain free. 9 of them are nut free. They are what am I missing? They're have no peanuts, they have no soy. And if you need to swap out, like I said, a couple of the recipes use butter as the fat. So if you can't have butter, but you can have ghee, you can swap that out. If you can't have either, then you can use another fat, like, palm oil or palm shortening or coconut oil would work. You might get a little bit of a different flavor, obviously, because, nothing is like butter, but, so yeah, and then one of the recipes uses avocado as the fat, and if you can't have avocados, then you can easily swap out coconut oil. The avocado is what makes the avocado mint chip ones green, so yours might not be green, but they'll still taste good.
Wonderful. Now we're going to talk a little bit about recipes, and I kind of feel bad that we're tantalizing you with all these, so I want to give you guys a little bit to look forward to. If you are here with us live today on Blab as we're recording this, you can look forward to Monday. Lindsey has given me permission to release a recipe from her book on the Traditional Cooking School blog, or is it Tuesday? Anyway, it's early next week. Monday? Okay. And actually, I'd love your feedback, everybody who's here live, because there's either the raspberry and dark chocolate, or there's the orange and dark chocolate. Just vote, and I'll take it into consideration. Which one would you like more? And if you're listening to this on the podcast, that recipe will already be up. So you can just go to traditionalcookingschool.com/blog and just go back in the archives a couple days, and you'll see whichever one is up on Monday. So we're getting...
we're tied right now. Oh,
yeah, we're tied. We'll have to go back and count. Yeah, you guys, you're making it hard. David, you might die if you try to eat your screen, but you're married to the gal. So
right.
You've probably got a freezer full. You've at least got a plate full. Well, thank you for voting, everyone. So look forward to Monday, and either the raspberry or the orange will be released. And thank you so much, Lindsey, for allowing us to do that. Why don't you share? Well, I'm going to say my favorite, although every time I have one of these, I think, oh, this is my favorite. And then I have the next one. No, this is my favorite. But I really think it's the raspberry. It tastes so much just like raspberries and cream. So anyway, Lindsey, talk about your favorite.
My favorite is the orange and dark chocolate.
Woo!
And I'll tell you why. Prior to my healthy eating days, David and I used to binge on the orange and dark chocolate Milano cookies from Pepperidge Farm. And and those cookies are just, the orange and dark chocolate is just the most amazing flavor combination. And I really missed that flavor. And so whenever I made these bites, honestly, I think my bites taste better than the orange and dark chocolate Milano from Pepperidge Farm. And so, yeah, I have to go with the orange and dark chocolate. David's favorite is the chocolate covered cherry.
Mm. Oh yeah, that's actually this one, and I use raspberries instead of cherry.
Yep. And the variation that you can do on that is, if you don't have cherries or if you don't like cherries, you can swap it out for strawberries. Or I'm so glad that you did the raspberry, even though I didn't include that as a variation, because that's what I want people to do. I want people to get my book and go, oh, but I could change this or I could do that, and make it your own, because there really are endless possibilities once you have the basic formula. So,
well, right. And the thing is the basic formula, we tend to have an assortment of those ingredients. I mean, if we have a traditional food kitchen, we probably already have most of the things we need. We don't have to run out and buy. And the one thing I was missing was cherries.
Yeah.
So I was like, I have raspberries in the freezer. I'm going to do that.
Yeah. And see it. And it worked great.
It did.
Yeah. So David's favorite is the chocolate covered cherry. Our daughter's favorite, she goes back and forth. She picks a new favorite all the time. But at the time I wrote the book, the strawberry lemonade ones were her favorite.
Ooh,
and I'm pretty sure it's because they're pink, and pink is just her favorite color. And our son's favorite is the salted caramel and dark chocolate.
Good choices. All of you. Wonderful. Of course, it's not hard to pick. It's a book full of favorites.
Right. They're all really, really yummy.
Yeah. So we have 2 questions coming in that pertain, I think. Luetta is saying, have you tried adding cream?
Nope. Because they're all dairy free, and I did that on purpose because I was selling them at the farmer's market, and I wanted to be really sensitive, and I didn't want to be that one booth that somebody came to and got sick because they ate something of mine that had something in it they were allergic to. And also, because I have my own website, and because I write for your website, and I'm just on people's blogs all the time, and I read the comments that people leave in blogs, and no matter what recipe you post that you think is allergy friendly, there's always 1 or 2 comments that says, but I can't have that. And so then people are always wanting to know if they can substitute even an allergy friendly recipe.
Right.
So, there have even been recipes that I've done for your website that, it's like something calls for butter or ghee, and they can't have either one of those. And so they want to know, what can I substitute for that? So I worked really, really hard to keep out as many allergenic foods as possible, because I like to be really sensitive to that, because I know that the need is out there for majorly super allergy friendly recipes, right. Not just dairy free or gluten free, but even beyond that.
Mm-hmm. And so, Luetta, I think you could add cream. It's going to add like if you wanted to have that cream dimension, it's going to add a little bit of liquid. So you want to have some absorbent additional ingredients, or increase the current ingredients to account for that additional liquid.
Yeah.
Luetta is also asking about pineapple. I think pineapple would be a great.
These is pineapple and coconut.
Definitely. And these from the raspberries, they're a little bit of a wetter dough, which means actually right out of the freezer, they're actually quite soft to bite into, whereas these are harder out of the freezer, and they could use a couple minutes to soften up to really be a better feel. So anyway, anywhere there's fruit, I think pineapple would work, right, Lindsey? Or even go for that flavor.
Yeah, and I found you can use fresh or frozen fruit in the recipes. I tested both. I preferred the recipes with the frozen fruit because I think it's the less moisture is in frozen fruit than in fresh fruit. So if you were going to use pineapple, I would probably use a frozen pineapple. And then you would want to decrease the moisture elsewhere. And once, make a couple of recipes from the book and kind of get a feel for what the dough feels like, and then experiment on your own, because you'll know if it's too wet or too dry.
Right.
And, and also, like, even if your coconut oil is melted but not soft, it's even different then. So, I mean, I made the salted caramel and dark chocolate last night, and my coconut oil was totally melted, and they ended up being wetter. than if the coconut oil had just been softened as opposed to melted. So once you make a few recipes, you'll figure out what it's supposed to feel like, and it's not hard to go from there and make your own variations. But I definitely think that Louetta should try the pineapple and coconut because it was
awesome. For sure. So Diane's asking, looks like these need to be refrigerated. Is that right? That's correct. Fridge or freezer. But these have been at room temperature now for an hour. So it doesn't mean they have to be, they can sit for, depending on your room temperature for a while.
Yeah. When I took them to the farmer's market this summer, I just put one of each kind out on the cutting board that I had, and I kept the rest in a cooler because there were days that it was over 80 degrees outside. And so I needed to keep them cold because they will eventually, like coconut oil is runny at, 74 degrees. And so if it's hotter than 74 degrees in your house, you're going to want to keep them refrigerated or frozen until you're ready to serve.
For sure. Okay, so we've talked about the recipe. We talked about everything. It's kind of time to wrap up, which I will do. If you guys have questions, we'll take those in a moment. More questions. I've been answering the ones that are pertinent as we go. The couple things I want to say is I hope we've convinced you to get the book. It is not expensive, and it's 50% off. Here's the link for you. tradcookschool.com/no-bake. Okay, and if you're listening to this blab or the podcast later, I'm going to put this link in the messages. I'm throwing in a bonus because independently of Lindsey, I was working on a no-bake cookie. Now, these are not going to be as allergy-friendly because I use pre-soaked oats, but they have oats, and they have a nut butter, and they have coconut, and they have chia seeds, and then you can add cocoa powder, and they're sweetened with honey or another liquid sweetener. So they certainly don't look as pretty as the pink ones.
Oh, I think they look good. They're chocolate.
They're chocolate. But all you have to do is, if you purchase Lindsey's book, just forward the receipt to me, Wardee, Wardee, @traditionalcookingschool.com, and I'll reply within a few days with this special recipe for you, which isn't anywhere yet. So the only place to get it at this point is by buying Lindsey's book.
It's exclusive.
Yep. And I neglected to mention, but Lindsey blogs at Today in Deatsville. Her last name is Dietz, so that's where Deatsville comes from. Isn't that cute? So todayindeatsville.com, that's where you can find her. Again, the book is tradcookschool.com/no-bake. And if you use the link to purchase it, forward your receipt to me, and I'll reply with my own no-bake recipe that uses pre-soaked oats. Lindsey, do you have anything you want to add?
I don't think I do. I think, Wardee, though, that I think we should be mean and we should take a bite of our bites while we're on here.
Well, I'm going to pick my favorite, the raspberry.
Okay. I'm gonna go with the salted caramel and dark chocolate.
All right. I know. It is cruel, isn't it? You guys, I'm so sorry. Here.
And I just want to point out, I guess it's good to show this. Like, mine have been sitting out since we went on the air. My house is warm because I have a wood-burning stove. And I just took this bite, and it's still, like, it's holding together.
Yep, and mine too. And this is the softest of all three.
It's not crumbling, or falling apart at all. And a lot of times when something sits out like that, it'll fall apart when you eat it. But mine's not, so...
Thank you for bearing with us as we eat that, everyone.
That was really yummy.
It was. Good. And the other thing to remind you all, if you're listening live, check traditionalcookingschool.com on Monday because I'll release one of the recipes. Lindsey's given permission. If you're listening to this podcast or a replay after Monday, then, of course, you can just go back in traditionalcookingschool.com's blog history and find that recipe, or in the podcast notes, because the show notes for this recipe are going to be at knowyourfoodpodcast.com/140. So I'll be sure to include a link in the show notes to that recipe, so it'll be convenient for you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Lindsey. This has been so fun. Thank you for sharing your recipes with the Traditional Cooking School crowd. I think everybody's going to love it. And remember, go ahead.
I hope they love it. We love them, and all of our neighbors. If you come to Minnesota, they all love them. So, I really hope everyone loves it, and I hope they find the book helpful and easy, and it's a low maintenance kind of recipe book. So
totally, I think that's why I love it so much.
Yeah,
it's definitely a favorite.
Yeah, and if anyone has any questions, I'd love to answer your questions.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for being here live. Yeah. And thank you for listening to this podcast later. And just remember, the show notes are available for you at knowyourfoodpodcast.com/140. And Lindsey's book is at tradcookschool.com/nobake. Yeah. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye. Thanks.